Now, in order to understand what's going on in the question concerning technology, we have to look back for a second at his 1930 essay on the essence of truth. And it's in this essay that he comes up with a rather unique and ingenious theory of what he thinks truth is all about, or what the essence of truth is. So he says he's looking for the essence of truth. And he says the traditional understanding of truth as the agreement of knowledge with its object is a cliche that conceals the real meaning of truth. This idea of concealment is going to be central to the idea, and it's also related to his the idea of destruction that he creates, that Derrida will later pick up and turn it into deconstruction. Destruction, Abbau, as Heidegger puts it, is what happens when you go back and you clear out all these basic worn out ideas that have concealed our understanding of something, so that we can't see it in a fresh way without going back and weeding out the concealments. And the concealments are normally cliches, traditional interpretations, like the subject-object dichotomy in philosophy, or the idea of truth as the adequation of the intellect with things. These are cliches. They're concealments. They conceal the truth of things, and an Abbau has to be performed by destroying these old concepts. And a lot of Heidegger, you'll notice that a lot of Heidegger's metaphors here are rural, rustic metaphors. They're like going out into the forest and clearing out weeds to see what the clear thing is underneath. And his idea of truth as unconcealment is very similar to walking out into a meadow where suddenly everything's clear, the Lichtung, as he calls it, the clearing. So there's that. Now, so the old idea of truth that he wants to get rid of is this idea that truth is the agreement of the intellect with its object, with objects, the adequatio theory of the Middle Ages. He says that's the old idea. And his understanding of truth is a different thing. It's a relationship between the subject, or let's say the inquirer, the questioner, and the object, the entity, that creates a relationship between them, and the subject puts propositions, tests the world by putting propositions to it that open up certain aspects of entities, objects in the world. And these openings then create an open region between the entities and the questioner in such a way that certain facets of the world come out of unconcealment. And there's a disclosedness there in the truth event that reveals facets about the world that have otherwise been hidden. They may have been hidden underneath bad concepts, or they just may simply not be evident. They may not have been evident to someone. But the idea of it is that what happens in the truth process, and this is truth is aletheia. Aletheia is the Greek word for revealing. Truth is a revealing, whereby certain propositions are put to the world and to entities, and they unconceal themselves in that process. But at the same time as they unconceal themselves, and you get this sort of, there's almost a mythological dimension to Heidegger's thinking. It's very Germanic in this sense. This you can sort of visualize in your mind this dark, murky realm out of which things are just surfacing into view and then going back down and surfacing into view and dissolving again. That's kind of the structure of his mind. The way it works is that visual image of the emergence of light out of darkness. That's a basic mythological idea. And then so in this process of aletheia, of unconcealment, there's a simultaneous concealment. Things do not always just reveal every facet about themselves. They simultaneously unconceal and conceal facets of themselves. So there's always this transcendent aspect of things in the world, whereby error is always built into the truth process. Human beings, he says, are in the mode of existence. We exist. And by that he means not the existence of Dasein, but the existence means that we are open to all possibilities that phenomena have. There are all these possibilities, and we're open to them, but In making truth propositions, truth statements, we insist. We take a stance, a particular stance toward the world, toward things, and in taking that stance, making that insistence, the possibilities collapse. A lot of them disappear into that dark manifold that I was talking about, and only certain aspects of it come into view, unconceal themselves, come into the what Heidegger calls the clearing, Lichtung. That's aletheia. It's things flashing forth phenomenally and coming into the clearing, but they don't ever. They're not ever completely clear. You know, we have to imagine the object as it comes into the clearing with certain murk around it. Things hide aspects of themselves. So as a result of this, then, the crucial point here is that the truth process can never be complete and it can never be total because error is built into it fundamentally. Every truth system is flawed and incomplete by the definition of the truth process as an unconcealing simultaneously with a concealing. Aspects of phenomena withdraw into the darkness at the same time that they reveal certain aspects of themselves. And then he specifically has in mind here the way science has gone about putting a kind of imperial gaze to the world that sort of wants it to conform to what it wants from it. And in doing so, it distorts the revealing process and makes it seem as though there is only one stance, there is only one possible process of revealing, the scientific way, as though it were the only way. But the propositions that science puts toward the world, toward entities, that causes things to unconceal and simultaneously conceal, the aspects of things that are concealed, he says, the artist is the one who picks up these things about the world that have been concealed, these aspects of being that have been concealed, and makes them visible, brings them into visibility. The artist is a world maker. He creates worlds, and he makes hidden aspects of being visible. Now, being, the way Heidegger means it, being with the capital B, is the background practices and prescriptions that make anything intelligible as such in a given age. So being is specific, as we've seen, to specific historical epochs, and the way that people understand their world is always different from epoch to epoch. Custom dictates that. Another word for being might be custom, although it has more connotations than just that. So the artist is able to pick up on these aspects of being, of the world, that have withdrawn themselves. And so it's very similar to McLuhan's idea that the job of the artist is to make an invisible environment visible and thereby create a counter environment to the prevailing visible environment. The artist has got kind of built-in radar for this. And so that's the theory of truth as aletheia. And it's brilliant because, as you can see, it's a foundational text in making a lot of what happens in postmodern thinking possible, because it basically says that there's no complete truth system, and it implies that philosophers, let's say of the Ken Wilber type, who try to present the world as complete in a complete system, is an impossibility. It's an impossibility for them to do this, because no truth system is complete. Everyone is flawed by definition, and error is built into every truth system. So we can have no master narratives that can pretend to completion, and then just as Derrida picks up this current, and there can be no authoritative final interpretation of anything. And so you can see how a lot of what happens in postmodernism is a set of responses to questions initially put and opened up by Heidegger in this essay. So it's a crucial essay, the essay on the essence of truth. And it's necessary to understand then his idea of truth as aletheia in order to make sense out of what he says about technology, which we're going to get to now. So he writes this essay on the question concerning technology in 1949. And he starts off by saying then that he wants to ask about, he's questioning concerning technology, and he specifically wants to know what the essence of technology is. And he says, the essence of technology isn't technological. It cannot be technology or anything technological. Just as the essence of treeness has nothing to do with this or that particular tree, but is essential. It's the essence of treeness. So he's looking for the essence of technology, not any particular collection of gadgets or some total of technology. And he says that the common assumption about technology is that, as he says, technology is a means to an end. Everyone knows that, and it's a human activity. And then he starts off by looking then at the four causes and how things are brought into being. Everything in Heidegger is concerned with this basically mythological attitude of generation, how things come into being and manifest themselves and disappear. It's very mythological. Even though those mythic substructures are behind his concepts. His concepts conceal myths. If James Hillman had said in Revisioning Psychology that there are gods in our ideas, there are definitely gods in Heidegger's ideas. They're hidden in there, if you know where to look for them. So he looks at the four causes and he says, imagine a chalice, a silver chalice, and he says, let's look at what has brought this forth. The material cause of the silver chalice is silver. That's what it's made out of. And its formal cause is its eidos, its aspect, its shape, its form, basically. That's the formal cause. And then its final cause is that for which it has been brought into being in the first place, namely to perform a role in a ritual. And the efficient cause then is the silversmith then, who combines these causes together and brings the chalice into being. That's the efficient cause. So that's the traditional process of bringing something into being. And so then he says that there are, in terms of coming into being, there are these two aspects. The Greek understanding of poiesis. Poiesis is that by means of which things are made, and it's actually another mode of revealing, a mode of aletheia, that is, insofar as that poiesis covered technological objects as well as artistic objects. But it has the connotations. What poiesis reveals are things, and he doesn't say this, I'm reading between the lines, but he implies it, is that things are well made. They are crafted. There's been loving care put into them. That's poiesis. There's a sense of cultivation in the traditional creation of objects, whether they were works of art or whether they were technological. They were made carefully and lovingly. There was care put into them. So poiesis reveals that kind of care and concern and cultivation in how the ancients made things. And the other aspect of poiesis is phusis, and phusis is what is normally translated as the Greek word for nature. But Heidegger says that it doesn't mean that. What it means is that phusis, as we have seen, was the original understanding of being. Things coming into being, flashing forth, and then vanishing. But he says in this essay, the specific connotation is that phusis is the means whereby something brings itself into being by itself. It's not made. Poiesis is the means whereby something is brought forth by someone. Phusis is like a plant coming into being and flowering. Things come into being from out of themselves. That too is a mythological idea. There are two different creation myths, actually. One whereby a maker creates the world, as we have inherited it in our biblical tradition and in a lot of the world's mythologies. But there's another type of myth that involves, very often it's a mother goddess who simply, as in Hesiod's Theogony, in the beginning, Gaia simply gives birth to her consort Uranus without being inseminated. She spontaneously produces. So the other creation myth is the world spontaneously, autopoietically making itself from out of itself. So he's got those are two hidden myths here behind his ideas about bringing forth. But then he says, so what he wants to know is, what is it that actually happens in this process of bringing forth? What is it that happens? And he says, bringing forth brings out of concealment into unconcealment. So it's the same thing then, structurally speaking, as the truth process of aletheia. Because he's going to say that technology itself is a way of revealing. It's a truth, it's part of it, it has its own truth process. It's a mode of aletheia, of revealing. Techne was the Greek word that applied to both the making of art objects as well as tools, and it was poiesis, it was poetic. There was something poetic about the traditional Greek idea of techne.